right, so you are in the Setting Up Your Autumn course in CarmenCanvas. So that's going to be our focus today, is thinking about in our Carmen course, how do we best help students succeed. So we're going to go over a few things today to help us with that. So my name is Stephanie Rodick, and I'm the Manager of Professional Learning in the Office of Distance Education and E-Learning. Sarah, do you want to introduce yourself and Queenie next?
Hi, I'm Sarah Holt. I'm an instructional designer, also at ODI.
Hi, my name is Queenie Chow. I'm a project analyst at ODI.
Okay, so let me talk a little bit about outcomes, and then what are we trying to do today, and then our agenda, and then we'll go over kind of exactly how we're going to make this session work. So we have 5 things that we're hoping in 90 minutes that you can leave with. We will go over the expectations for using Carmen in autumn 2020. So there is, it's not a large set of expectations, but there are 4 things that everyone will have to do, regardless of what kind of teaching modality you're teaching in, whether it's in person, online, or hybrid. So hopefully you'll be able to identify what those are. We will talk briefly about how to use the template for Carmen and how to organize your course. So you should know by the end of today how to do that. We will hopefully talk enough about how to communicate and support your students online that you'll be able to identify which parts of your Carmen site that you'll need to adjust to do that. And then you'll be able to explain how students actually experience Carmen on their iPads in particular, because so many students are using that. And then obviously we'll talk about further resources, so we hope that you can read at the end of today's session. So we will first start with those expectations, and then we will kind of break down the 4 components. Sarah's going to talk about, in the middle of today, she'll talk about what all of those things are. And then while we're going through today, we will answer your questions through chat. And actually, maybe this is a good time, Queenie, for you to talk a little bit about how we'll do the question and answers.
Sure. Hi, I'll be monitoring the chat pretty much today. So if you have questions throughout the session, our presenters will just kind of have pauses every now and then to check that. And I'll try to keep up with those questions as well, answer them if I can. And if not, I'll try to keep track of them and make sure presenters are able to see that. If we don't get to everything, that's okay. Feel free to email your question to carmen@osu.edu, and then we can get to it after the session. So a couple things I wanted to bring your attention to. I see a lot of webcams already showing, so you don't have to show your webcam if you don't want to, but there's a little icon on the bottom left of your screen that says start or stop video. Feel free to use that, and we have everybody muted for this session, so we will be communicating with you all primarily through chat. All right, that's all I've got.
Great, thank you. So at the very end, when we, if we haven't gotten to those questions yet, we'll have some time after our time together. So after our 90 minutes, we'll spend 5 to 10 minutes making sure we get the rest of your questions answered, and we'll stop recording probably at that point. We do have a couple of places in our session where, depending on how well we're doing with time, and that will also depend on how many questions you have, we will take a little bit of couple of moments to talk about some questions for you to think through as you plan and reflect on your use of Carmen in the autumn term. Okay, so why don't we go ahead and get a sense of who you are. So this is going to be a poll question. So we're interested in knowing kind of what Carmen features you regularly use in your courses. And I'm only going to put on here the ones that we're talking about today. I know there are many others. So you should see the poll come up. And I see, and there you can answer, it's multiple choice. You can answer as many as you use. So we have about 65% of you have voted so far. So I'll give you a few more seconds here. Try and get in as many as possible. All right, I think I'm going to end our poll. We've got about 84% of you. So let me share the results and see who y'all are and what your experiences are with Carmen. So it looks like the majority of you, so Sarah, when you go over posting your syllabus, the majority of them have been posting their syllabus online. So we will go over kind of some tips on how to do that in the best way for your students to access it. And then it looks like we're anywhere between 71 and 84% for all of the others. So not everybody. So we have hopefully some new information for those of you who haven't, for example, been doing the announcements, using the announcements feature in Carmen. Sarah will go ahead and share some examples and talk about those, as well as the others. For those of you who have, so since so many of you have been doing these, it is helpful if you have tips or suggestions. You are welcome to answer questions. You know that we're all doing this together. So in the chat, you are welcome to just add in your own things that you've discovered along the way of best ways to do this, or things to consider. And I think we will all benefit from everyone's experience. Okay, so we are actually going to be talking a little bit about the student experience in the beginning and at the end, and then it kind of trickles through as a theme throughout the whole session. Because ultimately that's what we're trying to do, right, is have a Carmen course where students are experiencing this in a positive way. So what I guess I'm curious about, and you can use the yes, no button, that's under participants, and you'll see there's a yes, no button. So let me know, do you feel like you have a really good sense of what that student experience is in Carmen? So maybe you want to think about it as in, I know exactly what they see. So that's what I mean by student experience. So you can use the yes, no button. I've gotten a bunch of responses already. So do you know what that student experience looks like? And so far, most of us are no. And actually for prepping for this session, there were views that I had no idea students could see. Sarah, I don't know if any of this was new for you, but the view from students, particularly using their iPads, was something that was important for me to see. So that's why we're going to do that today. So 20 of you have said, like, even more, you're still ticking up. Most of you have said no, you have no idea. So great. So we're going to do a little bit of that work today. And then you'll feel a little bit better about what your students see and experience. So let's get started with those expectations, those major expectations that we all have to do regardless of what kind of course we're teaching. So there are 4 of them. The first is we need everyone to use their modules in Carmen. And there is a template that we have been sharing, and we'll share it again today. Sarah will go through and give you some best practices for using those modules. And this is a way to organize your course so that students actually know where to look for things and it makes sense to them. The second is posting that syllabus, which 90+% of you have been doing, which is great. The third is using those announcements, and that was one of our least used in our little poll earlier. So we'll talk a little bit about why using announcements is important as the main form of communication outside of class for students. You may have been using email, for example, and we'll talk a little bit about why one is better than the other, particularly in, we're still in a pandemic. So particularly in the environment that we're in today. And then lastly, putting our assignments in Carmen, and then that populates a gradebook and using the gradebook, right, for all of our courses. So students have one common place to go to. So those are the 4 expectations for this term. And where did this come from? So a lot of this came from our student surveys. So the OSAS office, our researchers there did 3 surveys, one for instructors, and then one for undergrad students, and one for graduate and professional students. And what they found in the undergrad student survey was that students really struggled with well, they really struggled with a lot of things, but I'm highlighting the things that connect to Carmen. So some of the struggles were keeping track of any changes that folks made to assignments. And there is a high likelihood that we're all going to have to pivot our courses, particularly if we're not already teaching fully online. Students will once again try and figure out where is everything, right? So they really struggled in the spring. So that's what this survey was from, was what their experiences were from spring term, and that was a big one. They were lacking information on what their grades actually were. They know to use their grades function in Carmen, but not everyone was putting their grades in the Gradebook, which is why that's one of the expectations. And then a big one was either not getting any communication from their instructors or not knowing where to find that communication. Sarah will give us a couple examples of why all of us emailing all of our students all the time maybe was not working. And this quote was one of the things that was pretty representative of our undergrad student experience, just the lack of consistency in professors' expectations about how Carmen was used, that they didn't all use it consistently. And this was just really, it's already challenging for in-person classes, that inconsistency, but with everything happening in the spring term, it just kind of amplified it. So that is a lot of the drivers for why these Carmen expectations are in place. So in addition to the survey, we wanted to bring up a few other things that I'm sure we've all thought about and we know, but I think we all benefit from hearing it yet again. There are some other considerations for those student expectations. Your students will likely, not all of them, but will likely be taking courses in multiple modalities. They may have some courses, like their lab courses or their performance courses, in person. They may have some that are hybrid, and there are variations on how hybrid classes are working. And then they have some online courses. That's a lot to kind of keep track of. So having one hub, and we have hub, the hub is Carmen, but if we are all using it consistently, students have a much better experience finding things. And we also know that they are just stressed out, just like I'm sure you are stressed out. Sarah, Queenie, and I, we're all stressed out, right? Our students, we know from the spring survey and then just what we were hearing from students on our own, they had multiple things going on. And most of those stressors are not going away for autumn. The reality is some of them are still going to have housing issues. They either couldn't find housing or they're in not the best housing situation. Right, they are having problems and issues still with access, with their bandwidth, with their internet. Many of them are struggling with still being at home with family. Some of them staying at home is a challenge, just trying to manage it all. And for those of them who are going to be taking their courses mostly online, or that they are commuter students, that is definitely going to continue to be, it's going to be a stressor. They may also be having health issues. The reality is some of our students, if not many of our students, are going to be in quarantine or be unhealthy or sick, or their family members may, right? So we've got that. And on top of everything else, there's the finances. Many of them talked to us in the survey about losing their jobs on campus or off campus. And then I put rank on here because this is autumn, so we'll have a lot of first-year students. So for those of you who are teaching courses that have a lot of first-year students in them, can you imagine, like, this is your first, right, experience in college? It's just a lot. It's a lot to take in and try and figure out how to maneuver around that. And then we've also heard from our seniors and our students who were thinking they were going to graduate, but then decided they needed to drop out of some of their courses because they just had too much on their plate, or they're worried that they're not going to be able to successfully graduate in the time frame that they were hoping. So we're all stressed, but we also have the two ends of the continuum here for our students. Our graduate and professional students, by the way, also struggled. They just struggled slightly less, in particular about like that shift to online, but all those stressors were still there for them. The other nice thing about Carmen is that it has some built-in features that help students be kind of self-regulated about their learning process. So there are things like where modules can, they have to do something first and then a module will appear, right? Or they have a to-do list that you'll see a picture of here in a little bit, where students have calendaring, right? They have all of these things to help them stay on track and kind of make sure that they're making progress towards the work in all of their courses. And that's built into Carmen. So once we are able as instructors to get everything in there, our students have a much easier time just kind of keeping track using those features. And then as I mentioned, there's a whole, there's a big possibility that we may quickly have to all change back over to doing things all online again. And maybe we come back. I have no idea what's going to happen. Your guess is as good as mine. But I want us to think about, you know, our students' experience if we have to shift, how much easier it would be if everything was in Carmen already, and then when they have to go online, it's right where it was before. Okay, so are there any questions about those, the fact that there are 4 expectations? We're going to go into each one in depth here in a moment, or any of the considerations, or any other, you're welcome to add in the chat any other considerations that we haven't listed. Okay, I don't see any, so we're gonna move on. When you have questions, please don't hesitate to, even if it's stuff from earlier on, post it in the chat for us. Okay, Sarah, do you want to screen share?
Sure. Okay. So one of those expectations that Stephanie just talked about was organizing your materials in Carmen using some kind of modules. And this grows out of those of us who teach in person, we may have been using Carmen to share files, but a lot of times what I've seen, and I'm guilty of doing it in my face-to-face classes as well, is saying something might come up in your face-to-face session and somebody asks you for an extra reading, or you realize, oh wow, this whole group of students is really interested in this topic. Let me post a supplementary article. And we just sort of dump files into Carmen and we say, go on Carmen, I'll post that article later, or I'll put the slides up for people who missed. And we're not always using that space intentionally. We're just kind of using it as a shared file storage location. And even if you're not planning on having a fully online course, we can do better and we can use these things more effectively. We're going to talk about that, and we're also going to talk about syllabus, because this is where sharing that information begins. And so this should be something, it looks like most of you are doing this in some way, but if we want to think about the specifics for autumn, this should be something that is done well before classes start so that students can see what's expected of them and make adjustments. As Stephanie said, you know, they're in a lot of different courses and they're going to be all different modalities, and those are not all announced yet. And so students have a schedule today and they may need to go and look at all of those syllabi as early as possible to realize, okay, wow, this means I'm supposed to be on Zoom until 11, and at 11:01, I'm supposed to be in an in-person course, and then at 11:30, I need to be across campus for my hybrid, but only every 3rd week. And so the earlier you can get that information in places where they can see it, the better. So you're already doing syllabi for every course you teach. Some specific things we want to think about as you update those are policy language that might be either specific to those online spaces or to going to school in a global pandemic. So definitely you're going to want to revisit your normal syllabi language and add some policy for what you want to do when something is disrupted due to health. So that includes if students are healthy but self-isolating because they may have come into contact and they're waiting for some test results. What should they do if they're sick or a family member is sick? What are you planning to do if you get sick? Let them know that you have a backup plan, or if your family member is sick or you need to self-isolate. Every department has these kinds of things in the works. If you don't have that language clear for yourself, check with your chair about how your department will be handling those kinds of things. But overall, we really would like you to approach this with a spirit of grace. You're going to have a lot more absences this semester than usual, and we need to be flexible and conscious of treating that with some humanity. Many people start with a sort of a basic, like, you can miss 2 days and after that I need an excuse, or you're going to start dropping letter grades. I would encourage you to spend some time thinking about that a little bit in a more flexible way, and put that language early in the syllabus in a place that they can see, so that they can make some mental adjustments and some plans. Also, this idea that we are going to be using announcements in Carmen as our main communications, that language should be in your syllabus somewhere so that students can begin to, create that culture with you of where are they going to go to find these announcements as things change. If you are expecting them to access any materials or activities, make those plans now, even if you haven't created those activities, even if you don't know where those materials are coming from. Decide where they should look and put that language in the syllabus so that, again, they can start to know, I'm only reading a textbook. I don't need to find materials on Carmen. Or in this other class I'm taking, most of them are peer-reviewed scholarly articles and they will be posted in Carmen for me to access. If you're doing some kind of a hybrid where they need to synchronously join via Zoom certain weeks, or if they're expected to watch a recording of your live course period, that language, again, detail all of those expectations and put them in your syllabus this term. And we're going to talk a lot more about Gradebook and how we would like you to be handling grades through the assignments feature, but you should know by now, sort of what your grade structure is, how long does it normally take you to go through the assignments, give feedback, get those grades posted. There's no expectation that you turn into a robot and get your grades turned around faster this term, but try to give them a realistic expectation so that they're not panicking and checking every 10 minutes, 24 hours after they submit something. If it's going to take you a week, let them know it'll take you a week. If you're going to do it in 2 days, let them know you can do it in 2 days. If you are teaching fully online, we would really encourage you to use the OD syllabus template. There are so many extra little pieces of things that can go into an online syllabus that supports your students. Like, how should they get tech support? You don't want to be their tech support, so the more information you can give them to find those things when their computers are not working right or their internet's glitching, if that can be in your syllabus, that gives you a nice place to refer them to. This syllabus template that's linked here will give you all of that preloaded in a digitally accessible form so that screen readers can read it. But even if you're not teaching fully distance, even if you're teaching fully face-to-face, I would encourage you to go look at that template. Many of those paragraphs can be copied and pasted for the kinds of policy language I've just talked about. If you don't know what might be appropriate to expect students to do in Carmen, that can give you a starting place and some language that you can use so you don't have to invent this all from scratch. And I think these slides, Queenie posted a link, so you can download those and just click right through if you'd like to use that template. Most of you are already posting your things to Carmen, your syllabus. So I was going to demo this, but it sounds like everybody mostly knows how to do it. When you're in your course shell, you'll see here on the left nav bar, you do have a syllabus link. Unless you've messed with the default features, students can also click on this. And this just gives you a blank page. You can use that edit feature and link your document, just upload it as a PDF or as a Word doc. We would encourage you not to copy and paste it here. I would rather have them be able to take that file, and that way they don't have to be connected to the internet to see your syllabus. It's also really helpful if you put your contact information here. This is a very simple version. I wanted you to see anybody can do this. All you have to do is put in that syllabus file and some text, but you could put your picture, you can put an intro video here, you can write a lovely piece about what the course will be. You can creatively, make this a nice welcoming space and think about it the way that you might do your first day of class. This is important even if you're teaching face-to-face, because not all of your students will be there on your first day, or if you're distancing and you're only some of your students will be coming on certain weeks. This means that they still get that experience and access right on day one. They don't have to wait till they see you in person to understand what's about to happen. This stuff down here populates, we'll talk a lot more about that as we talk about assignments, but you don't build this by hand, that auto-populates. So sharing information, you share the syllabus. That's one thing you'll need to do. And then you're also going to be sharing information in modules. Many of you, I think it was like about 75% were using modules in some way. Ideally, again, this is just to keep us from falling into that trap of using Carmen as a file dumping ground. We want to keep our focus on students using the information we're sharing rather than finding information. And so modules is just a way to have a repeated structure that tells students what to expect and how to move through this course. I'll show you some examples in a minute, but there's lots of flexibility here. You can adjust the headings and titles to communicate what you want them to be doing. And you can create pages, which allows you to group like things, put all your readings together, put all your video lectures together, that kind of thing. And if you would like a starting place for how to use this, we have our Carmen template here. There's directions. If you click through this link after the workshop, there will be directions on how to put that in your course. There's no expectation that you keep it exactly the same. Everybody will need to customize that for their own teaching, but this can give you a huge jump start in not needing to create every single thing from scratch, because we know you're maxed on time. We all are. Here's just some examples in case you have not used modules in the past, or in case you are using a very basic one and want to level up and do something a little more complex this semester. We really would like you to use titles and due dates. These due dates are created when you create your assignments or discussions, but you can see how when I created this discussion in this midterm, by adding my due date right there, it auto-populates into the module, so that in week 5, a student doesn't have to go back to that syllabus tab, download the document, scroll through and find page 5 to know when the midterm is happening. It's right there. They can log in and they know, oh, Friday is my midterm. This really, really helps them keep track of 5 things and know, this is obviously happening in Carmen versus in person. You could use a title or a header here, a text header, to remind them midterm this Friday, in person, Smith Labs. You can also see how the titles of the files themselves really clue students into what do I need to be doing. Here's my study guide. Here's a discussion. Here's a reading. So they have a sense of what repeated work do you want them to do in this space. This is more or less what you will get if you use that template. Every week has a start here and an overview where you can kind of give them here's what we're talking about this week, here are the types of due dates you might have in a general way, and maybe ask them some big questions or give some context for how this connects to what came before and where we're going. Even if you're teaching fully in person, I would really encourage you to have some kind of a weekly overview. You could do this in announcements if you want, or you can make this overview page. But it means that if a student misses or is quarantined due to health reasons, or if they have a disruption and they need to go back and figure out, okay, I'm 3 days behind, I need to get caught up, or they're distracted in class because of the stress, that information that helps them get into class mode is not lost. They have it here in a stable place that can help them use all the other resources more broadly. So even if you're not using any of the rest of this, that's a really great feature to include in all of our modalities. This has an example of one way to do a recitation in a fully online example. If you're interested in how we used Carmen to do that, I'd be happy to talk more with you about that afterwards. Many of you will have synchronous Zoom sessions as part of your hybrid or distance courses, and others of you will be teaching in person and have a synchronous face-to-face session with your students. This is an example of how you might use Carmen in a simple way to include those aspects of the course. So you can see here there's an overview. It kind of sets the tone for the week and gets students in context. Then the readings are here. Even if you're in person, this is a great place to add those readings and have that in a visible place for them if you need to be pivoting or catching up students who can't attend in person for some reason. And then you could use either the synchronous session and have your Zoom link right there, again, so they don't have to find the syllabus, find the right page, find the Zoom link, go back to Zoom. We're just condensing all that time and saying click through and be here ready to learn. You could also change this to be in class and have a sort of like do this before class. Here's our recording for those of you who couldn't attend, or here's directions for the activity you missed, and then after class, there's the homework or the assignment that's coming up. So you can change this for whatever modality you're using in those creative ways. You can use these headers, again, to draw attention to when something's going to be different. If you need to make adjustments to an assignment, or if there's a week where they're not following that same pattern, if you're doing cohorts and 1/3 of the class is going to meet in person, you could use this to say, you know, in class this week, group 1 in person, group 2, so that they never have to guess, where should I be? Where should I be attending? Where should I be getting my materials? And this can be customized as much as you want. This is a much more complex version. I don't expect to see anybody necessarily having this kind of complicated module structure, but this worked really well for this class. For many of us, we can group all the readings together and then have our in-class time and then have homework. For this class, the readings all applied to different things, and so she grouped them differently. There was a news feed that was current events. Students could deal with that before they had done any of the pre-reading for the week. It was an unfolding discussion. Then there was like textbook readings around the unifying theory of the course. That's the thinking and systems readings, and a reading quiz. And then there was a lecture, and then there was case studies, and that had other readings, other webinars, other assignments. And this just made more sense for how students would engage with the material rather than a list of files.
Sarah, before we get to this reflecting and planning, can I interject 2 questions that folks have had and we're waiting patiently for me to ask you? So do you have the chat open, Sarah? Maybe you to. Okay, so Margaret had asked, she was saying that she has 1 syllabus, it's almost done, and it followed the template, and it's like 20 pages long, mm-hmm. Which happens. And so, you know, so she was wondering though, when you upload it to the Carmen syllabus tab, is there a way, like for only a small amount of the text to show, and then like click on it and there's expanded view?
There's not a fancy, easy way to do that, but what I would encourage us to do as a best practice, even when we're not in a pandemic mode, is have the syllabus as a big document and then repeat the relevant pieces of that information at the place where students will use them. So have everything in the syllabus and then reiterate your expectations for discussion boards in your discussion board prompt. Take the directions for that assignment and the due dates and everything and put that in your assignments page. You can put your mental health statement and your student tech support information in a getting started module that they can access at any point. I think the syllabus is important before classes start and maybe on that first day or first week for students to have that big overview and know, is this even a class I can deal with right now? Is it something I can succeed in? Am I prepared for this? Does this work in all of the other considerations I have? What are the expectations going to be? But, you know, there's a joke and a meme and a trope of like, it's in the syllabus because students don't go back and reread the syllabus. And we can rage against that all we want, or we can start pulling that information that you spent so long curating and thoughtfully writing and planning and put it in the places where they're actually going to use it. They don't need the whole syllabus every week of every semester, but they might need that paragraph again on week 3. They may need that other paragraph again in week 6. So there's not a cute, easy way to do that in the template at this point, but I think you can copy and paste and have those things reappear where they're relevant.
So Linda asked a question too, and she asked, how do you set up the subsections within modules?
The subsections within modules. Let me screen share. Oops. Stopped the wrong thing. Sorry, guys. Okay, what I actually want to do is end this show. There we go. Okay, this is a Carmen course. So when you create a new module from scratch, if you're not using the template, you'll see this plus button here, and you can add a text header and write whatever you want. And then whatever items you add, you can move that text header around and it suddenly visually looks as if it was another section. So each of these big sections, that's a module. And then these smaller sections are just text headers, and we can move our materials around to organize them in a way that makes sense. This is just my scratchy sandbox, so it's not organized for students, but that's how you create those different sections. If you download the template, that will come preloaded, and then you can just edit the titles or the names as you want to.
So let's take a couple minutes, literally a couple of minutes. And I just want us to pause a couple of times today. One, just to give us time to process some of these sections, but also just to plan and reflect on what is it that you want to do. So I just want to take 2 minutes to think about, and you're welcome to share some of this in the chat if you want to. You're welcome to write it down wherever you want, or just think about it. But what could actually be adjusted for you personally in your Carmen shell to better help students navigate the course? And then what repeating module structure maybe starts to make sense for you? You can answer one or both. Just take 2 minutes to think about those two things. And again, you're welcome to share that in the chat if you want, but it's really just for you. Okay. So thank you for those of you who let us know kind of what your thinking is in the chat. Again, you don't have to. Thank you for that. So are there any other questions that you have about just this organizational piece? Oh, so Deborah wrote, but it went to me personally. So how do you create links for readings in subheadings?
I would encourage you to make a Carmen page, and I can show you a page. Why won't this end the show? So this is these are readings that are just linked as links. If you're using library links and you have very, very few readings, you can link directly to that reading through a permalink, but it's not pretty. And I'm not logged in, so it doesn't take me, or I am logged in, so it does take me directly to this. But it's not pretty. It doesn't let you tell students what to do with that at all. And so if you use our template, instead of just linking the files, what you can create is something much more helpful to students. And so let me show you here is a reading page. So this is one page. That's what it's called in Carmen. You'll add a page. And this lets you create almost like a website. If you use the template, this will come more or less as is, and you just edit the text. So you set the context. What do you want students to pay attention to? What's the theme of these readings? Why are these readings in the course? You could make a video for this, or you can just put a couple sentences to get them putting that reading in context with other stuff. And then you can link your readings directly in here and put them in. So you might have 3 or 4. This is not a great example since it's not an academic course. Let me show you one more. But I would use that page function in Carmen to do this and put readings together for students in a way that makes sense for them. Why are none of my good examples right here?
Because you're on the spot, Sarah.
Of course.
Because 56 people are watching you.
No pressure. Fine.
They are all.
So I have a lot of courses in my, hopefully none of you have this many. Okay, here's one. That should be good. So I'm going to modules. Here's readings week 1. It's a page. She's given a very brief introduction on like, what are these readings about? There's some questions to think about before you do the readings. And then you can see that she has a link, if it is something you can link directly to, and the citation. And then there's optional stuff for her students that want this. It is extra work to put the links in. If you are scrambling to put 4 classes together, please don't feel pressure to do that part right now. But getting students to the things they need to read faster lets them spend more time reading it, makes it more likely they will read it, full stop. They spend more time reading and thinking about it in a useful way, and make sure that they're getting the version or the updated pieces that you want. You might just list chapter 1, chapter 2, page 63 through 70, whatever makes sense for your readings. But this page lets you put those all together. This week, do these 3 things.
Okay, I'm going to have one more question for you, and then I know we need to move on to the next section. So Claudia had asked, how should I organize a study guide to take notes on as they're watching a video?
How do I organize a study guide?
Yeah, so organize a module. If I want to give students a study guide, how do I organize the module?
If they're going to be watching a lecture that you're either creating ahead of time and posting, or maybe you're creating it because you're simulcasting and you're recording what you do in person, or you're going to post some subset of that for students who miss. You can create a lecture page and put those videos right in here. And this one, of course, this example doesn't have it, but then you can put that study guide like right in that context information.
Show your screen, Sarah.
Oh.
You're done sharing yours. We're all looking at each other right now.
Thank you.
There you go.
So this is a lecture page. So again, we're here in the module. We've got week 1. We had those readings on that page. And then there's enough lectures in this course that lectures is a separate page where she's going to group that set of things students do together. And again, you can use the template. It's not like you have to program all of this from scratch in HTML, but you could also do it from scratch if you prefer. So in this example, she has a lecture page, and there's that space to set context. Tell them, what is this? Is it something you recorded live on Wednesday and now you're posting the video for people who missed it? Is it something you prepared ahead of time and you want them to watch it after they do the readings? And this is a place where you could just link your study guide and say, before you watch, open the study guide. As you watch, fill this out. So I would put it right where they're going to use it. If they're going to watch the videos in Carmen, put it right there. If you want them to download it and have it ready before they meet you in a physical classroom, you could put it in a before class kind of header section. Do the readings, download this, and you can either use the text headers to tell them or make that part of the readings page. to prepare before they join a physical face-to-face session.
And the lecture page is one of the drop downs when you're adding to the modules.
Yeah. Sorry for anybody that the scrolling is gonna make you feel
No
sick.
problem.
This is what you get when you download the template. You get like a week X, and you can duplicate this as many times as you need to. But what you get is a template starter lecture video page. You can edit that title. You can edit any of the content in it. So what you would get is this blank version. Yours would not be blue. This is specific to one of our departments, but yours is, it would look something similar to this. And it has these places that sort of prompt you for what you might include about your course. So before you watch, you could add one of these things to be download the study guide and open this file, fill it out as you go. And then it has spaces where you can add your videos. You just easily swap this generic one out for your real one. Here again, there's a space at the bottom for additional materials. If those are optional, you can keep them at the end. If it's something you really are requiring them to do, I would put it before they watch the video, because it's frustrating for them to watch the whole video and then scroll down and say, oh, I was supposed to be using this.
Okay, so let's get to announcements. We were doing so good with our time. Then we answered questions, which is why we're here. So let's move on to, if you want to screen share,
Yep.
say, announcements. And we'll try and quickly get through what in the world are these things? Why should we use this? Was not used as much there, if you remember, by our folks.
Yeah, this is probably new to most people. And if you are using announcements, you probably haven't used them as an intentional regular thing. It's probably been like as particular instances or changes come up. So we want to kind of build this in as like a habit, a place that we are comfortable doing. The main reason for this, Stephanie was mentioning, is students were telling us it's just really hard when you're in 5. Some of our performing arts majors and other majors, they may be in as many as 7 or 8 different courses because they have to take a lot of 1 credit hour things. And so you're trying to keep track of all of these expectations, all of these communications. And in the current moment, if every single one of those classes is making changes, adjustments, and announcements, it can be really hard to keep track of that in a central place. This is one of our students who works for us at Odie, and she very generously wanted to share. I wanted to point out some things. I'm a working professional. I've been using email in my daily life for 20 years. I grew up, I'm enough of a younger generation that email has always been a part of my college experience. But I use email, and you all probably use email very different from our undergrad students. So you can see I'm a 0 inbox person. My email is at 0 before I log off for the day. She has 1,500 emails. This stresses me out. I'm just stressed out. I have one work email address I use for professional stuff and another one for signing up for Donato's coupons, right? And like my Gap sales emails. Students just put it all together in one place. I check my email at certain times every day. I have a whole email hygiene routine that I do to be responsive in my job. We know that students are telling us maybe if we're lucky, they check once a day. Oftentimes they might only check once or twice a week. She got this many course-related important emails in 15 minutes on this particular day. So if she went a whole other day or a whole week without checking these, it's going to be impossible for her to sort out of 700 emails which were the most important. What is the most recent announcement that she needs to find relevant? And we can say that's on them. They should have better email habits. Well, I'm sure that you don't actually want to use a big chunk of your course time to teach them how to use email. And so it is much more reasonable to just put our information in the places they use. If using email is an important professional skill that is core to your course, if you're teaching business communications, then sure, you can maybe find ways to use that. But at the university level, what we want to do is put important stuff where they see it, where they use it. And there's good reasons to just say, we are not ever going to change 18, 19-year-olds' email habits at this point. Let's just put this stuff where they will see it and get on with the learning.
Maybe not during a pandemic either.
Especially not during a pandemic. This is not a point when many of us are changing those communication habits. We just need to adjust as we can. So limit emails. If email feels important to you, if you're hearing me say this and you're like, having some kind of an emotional response. I get that. You are also stressed and you don't want to change your habits, and that's also valid. But I want your students to hear what you're saying, because you're putting time into making these changes, making these updates, and I want them to see that take care and time and succeed, and not bombard you with personal emails for the things you've already written somewhere else. So if email feels important, if that feels like an emotional thing you're attached to, you can just click a little box when you do your announcement and it will duplicate it and send an email to them, so they will get it in both places. You can use announcements in lots of different ways. Obviously, they're a really important way if you have to make a change, if you are sick, if the university needs to pivot and go online after a certain amount of time where you've been meeting face-to-face, if an assignment due date or requirements is going to change. Those are really great things to put in an announcement so that everybody sees it the minute they log in. But you can also use it to introduce yourself with a photo and welcome to the course. And it's right there the first time they log in. Oh, how welcoming. You've set a really great inclusive tone. And they put a face and a name together with a photo or a video. You can make that part of your weekly habit to, even if you're teaching face-to-face, this might be another place, if you don't want to use that module template, to just sort of say, here's the topics we're covering today. As a reminder, your finals on Friday, or whatever those kinds of reminders you might do in the first 5 minutes of a face-to-face course. You can duplicate that in an announcement for the students who aren't joining you in person. Also, we're all going to have tech problems this semester, including me. Obviously, I'm not even sharing my screen when I need to be. And this is something I do every day. You're going to have Wi-Fi issues. Carmen things are going to be set up in ways that you didn't mean them to be, with the wrong points, or some students won't be able to log in, or groups will have problems with Zoom breakout rooms. And so announcements are a great way to acknowledge, hey, this is not going how I planned. Here's my plan to fix it. I appreciate you. Whatever adjustment you're making to not penalize their grades, you can really bring down that stress level just by being a frequent communicator about anything unexpected that's taking place. And we know from the SEIs, we know from the student survey, students appreciate that. They don't expect you to be perfect, but if you can be transparent about what's not working and let them know that you're trying, or that you have a plan, or that you're investigating, they're willing to give you a great deal of grace on all of those tech problems we are all going to have in the coming weeks. Here's a couple of examples. This is one that I did in a graduate seminar that I have, where the groups were sort of sending me a ton of individual emails about how they were supposed to proceed. So I just sent out an announcement to clarify with the entire class and to remind them that even though there's nothing due, you are supposed to be working on something. So this can be just sort of a let's come back together and clarify space. Here's another example of a time that there were some tech glitches for this person's final, and Dr. McCorriston was able to remind them, wish them luck, but also say, this didn't work, here's my plan, this is not going to affect anyone's grade, everybody take a deep breath, we got this, right? So these are just some examples of how that looks when they see it in the course. Stephanie, do we have time for questions about announcements? You're muted.
Kind of,
Okay.
not really. I'm answering a couple while I'm going through this. So I think probably people can just keep adding their questions, and I'll just kind of clump them all at the end of the next section, because I want to make sure we get to assignments in Gradebook.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I'm answering along as we go along. So.
Okay.
I also put the consultation request form link down there. So if there's anything that we don't get to, feel free to use that. Some of these questions, it's a little bit easier for us to get specifics of your exact situation, because it's hard to make a blanket recommendation. So if that is the case, please feel free to submit that consultation form, and we'll have more time to speak with you afterwards.
Thanks, Queenie.
I did want to just mention, Maggie had a good question about announcements and having too many of them, also creating that same overwhelming feeling for students. And, they just don't process and sort and evaluate priorities of things they see in the same way that we do as experts, right? And that's part of the learning process, and why they're here in college, is to develop some of those skills. So One thing I think is if you are somebody who knows you're going to have a lot of announcements, there's a lot of relevant current events, or that you expect a lot of clarification to need to happen because you're trying a complicated modality. Those of you that are going to be like having different students rotating, students have never done that before. We have never done that before, most of us. And so, there's going to probably be a lot of extra communication as we work out the kinks in that process. That's a nice place to have your overview as part of your module, and then use the announcements for a very limited subset. So if you're going to kind of have a running things the department wants you to share, upcoming workshops, upcoming guest speakers, current events that you want to pull out as things go, maybe pull that stuff into the overview that you could publish the night before that week, or even add to during the week, and then use your announcements for clarifications about their work or their processes or where they're supposed to be digitally or in person, and maybe separate out for yourself what are the big categories of things you need to update them on, and where might each of those live. Where do students see announcements in Carmen? They see it when they first log in. It pops up that there are a number of announcements in each of their courses. So that's a nice thing, is that you might have 3 announcements, someone else has 2, someone else has 7. They can see that right away. And then also when they go into the course, it appears at the top, in the very top, so that they can't totally miss it. They can choose not to click in if it's a long one, but at least they will see that something has been posted. And announcements as a homepage, if you think you're going to have a lot. If you're teaching in person, that is a great recommendation. There are some nuances that they can adjust their notifications. So there is some language in that syllabus template you might use about making sure their notifications are on, so that they do see it when they first log in to the main Carmen page, or that they could get it on their phone. But if you're teaching online and you're fully distance and you're going to be having a lot of other online spaces to communicate with them, you may not need that to be your homepage. Your module page probably makes more sense, because that's where they're going to be working every week.
Okay, let's go to the Gradebook and assignments next.
Okay. I have come to realize that a lot of folks are conflating gradebooks with rubrics. So I just want to clarify right out the bat that we are not requiring people to use rubrics. It is still a best practice. It will still save you a ton of time. Students still really appreciate it. We can talk about rubrics anytime you want, but I just wanted to make that clear because I think there has been some confusion. Gradebook is something that students can see their grades and where you are posting their grades within Carmen, and that's all it is. The confusing thing is that Gradebook is created when you create assignments. And that's a little different from those of you who used to teach in D2L Carmen back in the day, or who maybe have been at other institutions. You can't just build a gradebook in Carmen. You have to build it by creating all of your assignments separately. So you will need to create within that Carmen shell, ideally in the template, but you can just do them as freestanding assignments if that is actually like the only thing you are going to do at first, and then you can build the modules later. If you just need to do this right now, you can just have them as freestanding and drag them to modules later. So set them up for online submission. This image here is our OD template. So again, if you're downloading that, you'll get this sort of prefabricated set of headers for your assignment. This is based on a lot of really great, fairly recent research on the transparent template. And what we know is when you give students all of this information, they are more likely to reach your learning outcomes. They feel more motivated that they can succeed. They have efficacy, like they know what they need to do to succeed, which helps them persist in difficult tasks longer. And we know that it also decreases the achievement gap between underrepresented minorities and white students. So this is, for so many reasons in the current moment, a really easy, important way to increase equity and clarity within your class. So I would really strongly encourage you to just download this template, duplicate it, dump all of your assignment instructions in here. What you'll see is this helps you be really explicit about your expectations. So for students who aren't joining you face-to-face, when you're sort of able to respond to all of those live questions or realize they're missing the mark, I can clarify in the moment. This is a stable resource where they can go back and have that same set of clear, explicit expectations about how to give you the work you want to see. At minimum, though, please include the due dates in every assignment, not just in the syllabus and the directions, but actually when you're creating the assignment, make sure you're tagging a due date in that assignment item itself. We'll talk about why that matters. This is a really nice thing, just as a bonus, is that your academic integrity can be really quick and you can clarify it for every single assignment. Yes, this one is okay to use open book. No, this one is not open book. Yes, this one you can work together in the discussion boards to collaborate. No, this needs to be all your own work. So it's a really quick and easy way. And again, the more consistently people are using these in their courses, the more we're setting expectations for students on what counts as collaboration. When is it okay to Google? When can I use my notes? And when can I not? This is an example of when that is fully fleshed out. And so you'll notice that for many of us, this is a lot more information than we've included in our assignment directions before. But again, both in the research at large and in what we know from Ohio State students, this will dramatically increase the quality of work you get. And importantly for you personally, it decreases all of those individual questions you get about the assignment. What am I supposed to do? Where do I post this? You don't want them emailing you your finished assignment. You want them to keep it all in Carmen so you have it in one easy place. Many of you are teaching 2, 3, 4 courses. You may have 100 students, 200 students, 400 students. We want you to have your stuff in one easy place as well. So this is what that might look like when it's done. And you can see back here, instructions are sort of the like, what are you making? Where should you put it when you're done? And then what to include is where you can kind of go into that, like what are the prompts? How long should it be? What does a good response look like? If you have a rubric, you can also attach it here. But again, even if you are not using rubrics, make an assignment and attach a due date. This is what it looks like to them. And you can include images, you can include links to things that you want them to know, or other kinds of supporting references that they need to succeed. And this is what they see, so that really clearly at the top, even though you don't see it in the same format, they see when is the due date, how much is it worth, and how do they get it to you? Can they type it into the text box? Do you want them to upload a file? Are they supposed to link to another website that they found? Are they supposed to do a video or an audio file? Do they have choices about that? It's all very clear for them right here, no matter what device they're accessing their expectations. When you do what we've just suggested and include that information, add a date, and what kind of submission type, this lets Carmen on the back end save that information and put it every single place students might have questions. So you only have to enter it once in that assignment item, and students see it everywhere they go. So they see it when they click in the assignment. They also see it when they're on their phones. They can quickly look and see, I know I have that coming up. When was it? How much is it worth? So they can kind of plan their time, and they see, did I already do that or not? They can set this to give them reminders. It populates on their phone. It can remind them, hey, you have this coming up, with those notifications. So they can kind of, generate their own metacognition about their learning and tasks. They get these notifications, and it will show all of their different courses so that they can put it in context and not only need to know what do I need for 357, but what all the things due on Wednesday. What are all the things due on Friday? That might be a discussion board. They will see that here's an announcement that somebody made for them. There are assignments here. And again, it has that due date for when they need to get it in. And then also they have a to-do list. So this includes assignments, but it also may be anything that you maybe aren't grading, but is really important for them to do. Like, do they need to have a practice activity? Are they supposed to meet with their group? And this can let them get a notification that this is coming up. They need to do it, even if it's not a graded formal assignment. It also populates on their calendar. So again, all you have to do is add that date when you make the assignment, and the student sees that reminder in all of these different places automatically. This is a calendar that only has one thing, but you can imagine if you're taking 3, 5, 7 courses, having all of that put together in an easy view really helps students stay on top of what's happening, especially if you're making changes to due dates, or if you're going to be changing directions as things go, if you need to pivot or be responsive to current events. When they click through, they can see the due date. They can have a link right there if they want to click through and see all of the other information when they're ready to do the work or submit it. So we really hopefully are driving home this point that when you use the assignment template, you're creating your gradebook and you're meeting your minimum requirement. But if you also add those very few other steps of the due date and a little bit of information with each of those categories, you have now populated this rich student experience that really sets expectations for how they can succeed on these assignments or to-do items. So you are only affecting change in this assignments piece, but for students, they get all of the assignments. They also get a fully populated calendar. They get notifications. They get a to-do list, and they can see that gradebook all before they even have to go to the modules and navigate. So this stuff down here, they have preferences for how they like to do that, but they tell us over and over and over again, when they have access to this, they are more likely to succeed in your course. Okay, do we have time for questions about Gradebook? Or are there other main ideas I missed?
No, I answered most. We have 2 quick questions. We could do those first before just taking a moment to process.
Okay.
Linda had asked the question about, like, how do students basically see all your feedback after you use SpeedGrader? Because it seems like they have to do like a bazillion steps, or a 3-step process or so to download their graded submission. And she was just wondering if there's any other way to make it more visible for students.
Not really. I would just say if it's something that is really crucial for them to see that feedback, I mean, again, that's another reason I like rubrics, so you're not wasting a bunch of time writing individual feedback that they may or may not check. But if it's something that they need to build on and revise, I would put it right in Carmen as an assignment, ungraded, or for like participation points, and write that expectation, like download your feedback, read the feedback, answer these reflection questions about your feedback, or I want to see, write a paragraph about how that affected your second draft. And that could be for 2 points. It could be for 5 points. It can be for no points. But if it's something that's really important for you to do, I would build it in there as an item, asking them to do it. So that comes up on their to-do list and that comes up on their calendar. Oh, before Friday, I need to look at my feedback for that assignment.
So Deborah was asking about creating assignments or the modules first, and it doesn't matter which order you do that in. You definitely need to do those assignments, as Sarah mentioned earlier. And then when you go back and do the modules, there's a way to link those in, which is very easy to do. We'll go down that little drop-down list that she showed you, and you'll pick assignments, and then you'll pick the one, right, the correct assignment. So it doesn't matter which order you create them in.
Yeah, if you're ready to do your assignments today, go ahead and get that stuff in there. If you're doing a course you've taught before, you probably have most of that information ready to go. And so that's something you can go ahead and build, even if you're not sure what delivery method you're prepping for. You can go ahead and build that gradebook. You can always adjust it later as well, but others of you know what your module structure is and you're still designing assignments. So go ahead and start with the modules. It doesn't matter. They both just need to get done, and you can do them semi-independently.
So Mario had asked a question about when he creates an assignment, the gradebook. So when you create an assignment, correct, the gradebook entry will be created. So he's asking, how do I create a gradebook entry to record exam grades?
So you'll create an assignment or a quiz. If they're taking the exam in Carmen as a quiz or test, you would use the quiz function to create that. One confusing thing about Carmen is discussions, quizzes, or assignments can all be assignments and can all go into your gradebook. So you can choose to make a discussion graded, and it will suddenly show up in your gradebook. So you can use that to do assignments. A quiz, you can, if you are assigning a quiz they'll take in Carmen, you can create it there, and that grade will directly go into your gradebook and it will appear in the gradebook. But if you're taking a quiz in a face-to-face classroom or in some other way, like a take-home exam, and you just want them to upload a Word doc that they've done all their writing in, or an Excel file, you can do that as an assignment and just call it your final. And then in the directions say, we will be doing this in class on this date. Here's how to prepare. Here's your study guide. I will upload the grades 48 hours or 2 weeks, whatever, whenever you're actually, set those expectations in there. Even though they're not actually taking the exam, you can still create an assignment item with a due date. And then that will let you enter those grades into the gradebook manually.
So that also will answer Linda's question about, what if I wanted to do participation, right? So that's how you would do that. A couple questions came up about where do you find the assignment template. So I posted that a couple times. That's at that go.osu.edu/keep/teaching/hyphen template. It's the keep teaching template, right? So I put that in there. And then both Queenie and I also put in links for the gradebook tutorials. There's very short, little, very nice videos in the resource center for OD. So it's in there a couple times now. So why don't we go back and just, we're pretty good on time. So why don't we just take a couple minutes again, and can you go back to that other slide, Sarah? Yeah, there you go. The reflection one, the reflection and planning one. There we go. So we just want you to take a minute or two and just think about, now that you know a little bit, like just kind of itemize for yourself, what are some things that you can do to better support student learning based on the things you heard today. You're welcome to share that in the chat. Again, this is mostly just for you to have some processing time. Okay, so I see there are a couple more questions. I want to see if we can just take 1 minute. Some of them were written to me privately, so I will save. I've been saving the chat as we go along. If that's really hard for you to do, you can do it on an iPad, or even if you're watching on your phone, you have to go to the 3 dots, find chat, and there is a save chat function. I've been saving it as well, so if you need one, a copy of it, I'm happy to send it to you. There's lots of links we post on there. There were a couple other things about suggestions on you can make things 0 points, right? You can also, when you're setting up an assignment, today's session is not that kind of help session tutorial, but there is a way to set up the time frame of when students can submit. So they can still submit, but it may say that it's still past the deadline. So that was one of the questions that we've gotten to. Whoop.
That's the most common accommodation for disability services, is either having a longer window of time to access an assignment or a quiz, or having more time. And so you can individualize that for either subset of the class or 1 student or 3 students. And it's really pretty easy once you see it, but it's better to watch the video and just kind of follow those steps than hear us explain it.
It's just a little button that you would click once you do, other options open up. So Okay, we want to have a little bit of time to, everyone keeps writing their questions to me individually. So let me do this student experience part, and then I'll come back to what folks are writing to me. If it says that you wrote to me privately and you had other suggestions, see if you can recopy that to the whole group. All right, so we want to end with kind of bookending this student experience, and we wanted to show you a couple more things about how students are engaging with particularly Carmen, since that's what this session is about. Okay, so very quickly, let's just think about how are they using their devices, right? So we did see in the student survey, the undergrad survey in particular, that many students actually were using a desktop or a laptop to do a lot of their work. A huge portion were also using their iPads, but the majority of students actually were using a computer. They typically, outside of a pandemic and spring term, outside of that, they typically are using their computer, their laptop to, when they have longer time tasks, right? They're having to actually like input some stuff. They are doing their assignments when they have to do their quizzes and when they're home, which is why that makes sense that they did that in spring term. However, we have a large number of students, our undergrad students now almost past, I think we're over 75% now have an iPad. This coming August, they are working very diligently of trying to figure out how to get the rest of this last kind of group of first-year students their iPads, which now this year would make it so that the last 4 years, they've all now have iPads, this is the undergrad students. So while they're working to figure that out, we can think about how do they use those things. And typically they're bringing their iPads to class, they're doing note-taking, they're answering questions on the discussion board using their iPad, they may be using it to do some of their reading. Okay. And then, just like me, using my phone to do all of my work. They are also using their phones. You've probably seen it if you've taken the bus system, right? They're checking what grades did I get, right? They're using it to do a lot of those to-do list items, their calendar, right? Just kind of confirming or checking on information. So this is data that was taken from a report that literally I got Tuesday, and it was just finalized. And this survey data is for 607 students who responded that said that they have an iPad and that they use their university supported iPad. Okay, so the survey was bigger than this. It was to all of the digital flagship folks. And most of them, there were only a few that said they hadn't been using it. So most of them, 607 of them, said they're using it, and we asked them how did they use it. I will tell you that this particular survey that the university did to make sure we give credit to Ms. Beers in psychology because it was taken from her survey, which was also combined with a survey from EDUCAUSE. So that's where the survey questions came from. And you can see up here on the right side that students are using their iPads. 94% of them are using it to check their grades and for class information, which I don't know why that's not at 100, but 94% of them, right, are using it to check Carmen. So that is the #1 reason why they are using their iPads. Obviously email. And then if you look down the list, you'll see that they are taking notes. This is where they're reading stuff. And one of the comments we hear sometimes is like, well, students aren't actually using it for schoolwork. And clearly that is not the case. They're actually, almost everything on this list, particularly the top 2/3, is really about doing their work. So why is that important? I'll get to here in a moment. This is another set of data from the same survey, and it actually mimics almost exactly what Missy Beers had found in the Intro to Psychology program in her group. So out of the students who answered this question, you can see we broke it down by like what are the apps that they're using. So 96% of them are using it for using the Canvas student. 90% of them are using it for Notability. I don't know if any of you are using it, but that's what students are taking notes for. And Notability is something that actually comes on their iPads right now. Things may change here, but right now that is my understanding. If you have assignments or group activities that are being done in Office 365, you can see many of them are using that. Top Hat they're using, right? The OSU apps are things like the bus schedule, like that kind of stuff. We also have some wellness apps that fall into that category. Obviously Duo, as we all love Duo, I'm sure. And then there's some other that are very specific Apple apps. So by far, they're using the Canvas student app to view their course. And those are the examples that Sarah showed on there on the phone version, and the assignment one. Those are the views that students see, not from a desktop. That's what they see using their Canvas student app. Okay, so we have I have time, I think, to do this. Yes, we have a little video that I think we'll try and show here. All right. It's short.
I definitely like when my classes are in Carmen just because it consolidates them. So I can have everything in one place. And I have a class that doesn't use Carmen at all and uses an outside website, and it's a little bit frustrating because it's easier to forget if I have to go to multiple sources.
I guess there's not a clear way that they all do it, so it can lead to confusion.
Because classes that aren't in Carmen, you always have to go to their specific syllabus to check if there's a test coming up or if there's homework due or something like that. Whereas if they're in Carmen, it usually always shows on the calendar.
I think they all use it differently, which can be frustrating.
I like the feeling of a class having everything in Carmen. Like for some classes, let's say your grades and everything will be on Carmen, but when it comes to like your assignments or like the textbook, you have to go to like an outside source, and that kind of scrambles things sometimes.
I say organization is definitely the most important thing for me. In general, the college students, there's so much going on. You have so many classes, you have work, you have other priorities. So you want to know what you have to do, and you don't want there to be a lot of variation with that.
Basically, it saves a lot of time, and that helps with the time management because we're usually really busy.
It's really helpful how like the calendar's already set for you with all your classes and all your assignments and all your readings and everything you have to do, and like it's just there.
That's the one page on Carmen that I use the most.
A lot of my professors have used this, and it's very, very helpful.
You know what's coming up. Nothing's really gonna sneak up on you because like it's on the calendar and you can prepare for it.
So it helps a lot to just be at peace knowing that you've done everything that you need to do. And there's no surprises.
You have to put some readings on what I need to read for like that week. So that's very helpful in having that there.
It just means that it's consistent, like you know for sure that if they want something, it's posted on a due date at somewhere on Carmen.
I think deadlines, that's what I'm always checking. If the classes use Carmen, it's there. And also checking grades efficiently and just all at the same time.
But one of my instructors do not post any grades on the Carmen, and he even don't tell us like how many like weight of the homeworks, how many weight of the midterms and finals. So like we just go and guess. I also think it's really helpful when professors actually put the grades in Carmen because it helps me be more specific with my like personal goals.
If you can't see your grades and you don't really know how you're doing necessarily, that could add stress for a student and uncertainty.
So it's very difficult for you to like reach your level in your class, so you don't know how can you improve in this class.
For me, it's just that if they use it consistently and clearly.
Just to make sure it's in an organized fashion.
I think like the most important thing the instructors can do is always keeping up with Carmen and keeping us with us.
It's as much an asset for them as it is for us.
Okay, so one of the reasons why I wanted to show that to you is just kind of bookend things, but also just drive home the idea of why we have these 4 expectations set up for Carmen use. If students were saying this a year ago, then you can imagine how important that's going to be for this particular coming term, where they are just experiencing so much unknown. And we are too. And I know it's really stressful for all of us. Ultimately, our jobs are to help our students succeed. And so I just thought it would be useful, and I think Sarah agrees, right, that we thought it would be useful to hear it from the students' voices.
I want to point out one more thing about what they didn't say. None of them said post every single reading because I never want to use a search engine. Post amazing interactive multimedia. I want better produced videos. What they're asking us to do is really simple. And what they're asking us to do is be consistent so that they can juggle the immense amount of work they've decided to take on. And I think, you know, when we get locked down into one single course, it is easy to say, well, why can't you just find that? But if you can broaden up a little bit and try to remember what it's like to be juggling a loaded undergraduate schedule and now all of the things that they're juggling in a pandemic, I think it's really helpful to know that they're not asking us to be perfect. They're not asking us to be fancy. They're just asking us to communicate in one place. And I think we can all do that. And hopefully we've given you some tools to get that done.
Thank you, Sarah. Okay, so we are at the end of where we're at today. So a couple of things. We want to kind of just boil this down to a few key points, right? So hopefully today you have a sense of how you could use Carmen more effectively to support student learning. And by following and fulfilling those 4 Carmen expectations, you will not only be able to support those students, but actually be better suited and prepared, and your students will be if we have to do some kind of quick modality change. And also resources. We want you to know that this workshop it's being recorded, it will be posted. We'll probably do another version here in later August or later July / early August. But in the meantime, I think Queenie posted a couple times or at least once about some consultation help that's out there. So if you have specific questions that we didn't get to, or your own particular situation is unique for some reason, I mean, we all kind of have unique situations, I guess. But if you want to talk about those unique situations, please contact us. There is a link here to a consultation process, and you could get Queenie or myself or another number of instructional designers to help you. We posted a few specific things from the Resource Center, but you'll see here the Resource Center as a whole, so then you could do some searches there. If you're having trouble with Carmen specific, like the tool, or I can't find the thing, or something specific about using the tool, not necessarily the pedagogy around it, then contact the carmen@osu.edu email, and then you'll get linked into a different kind of process where they can answer your questions immediately. And then also remember that we'll continue, I'm creating a lot of workshops right now, so there'll be plenty more other workshops to think through your autumn course. I do want to mention also that there is a Carmen Common Sense website. And if you haven't heard of this is something that students had put together with the help of other leadership bodies at Ohio State. And so USG put together these 10 simple things to do, and you will see that the 4 things that we have on our list are also there. So you are welcome to go and look at that site and see what else the undergrad students are asking for. And then I really just want to thank you for joining us today. So we have time set aside. Sarah and I could say for a little bit here, if you are ready to go and you don't have any questions, we want to thank you and say we are really excited for any way that we can help you. This is our job, so we really do want this to be as successful as possible, considering all of the parameters that we're working around right now. So please contact us. Make sure you save the chat if you'd like to make sure that you have everything, just those 3 dots there at the bottom of the chat window, and you can save that. I'll save it as well for anyone who needs me to send it to you.